Hi, my name's Steve Ragg, and I'm a change management consultant with CMC Global. I'm going to be presenting at the World of Learning conference in October, and this is a pre-recording of that session intended for anyone who either can't make it in person or who would like a refresher on the content after the event. In the session, I'm going to be covering 5 key topics: 4 whys and a what. Firstly, why do we as change management professionals care about change management? Secondly, why should learning professionals care about change management? Thirdly, why enterprise change management really matters. Fourthly, why should we and how can we measure change management maturity? And then the last point is the what. What are the fundamentals of Project ECM? So just starting with a little bit of context, we all operate in a changing world. And our clients, the organizations we work with, they are continuously grappling with large numbers of changes of various different types. So many of them fall under the banner of digital transformation, whether it's robotic process automation, whether it's AI, whether it's other platforms that they're introducing under that banner of digital transformation, maybe Salesforce, maybe SAP, maybe Microsoft. The list is almost endless. Huge amounts of change going on. And it's not just digitally enabled change. It's also really important change initiatives around creating shared service center environments. Really important changes around diversity and inclusion. And all of these changes, people are not doing them for no reason. Organizations are doing them in order to enable them to either continue to be successful or to be more successful in the future. So the whys, there are all sorts of whys: improve customer experience, elimination of non-value added work, lots of valid reasons why change is important. Fact is, we live in a changing world, and if our organizations are going to continue to be successful, then change is an inevitable challenge that we have to deal with and succeed on for our organizations to survive and prosper. So moving on from that sort of fundamental point, I want to talk now about the dependency that successful change has on people. So if we take the Salesforce example, no particular reason for taking that example, we could have taken many others, and we think about the objectives of that type of project. So maybe the objectives are to eliminate manual sales reporting, to increase the effectiveness of sales pipeline management, or maybe to introduce a customer-focused service process. All of those are typical objectives that we see with this type of project. And associated with each of those projects, there will be benefits. These are the things that the organization is seeking to get out of the change. So the question that I have here is around what proportion of these benefits depend on people within the organization changing what they do? What proportion of the benefit depends on people change? And I don't have the answer specifically for Salesforce, but if we look to our clients, a sample of 1,250-ish clients, what they said was around 85%. We believe about 85% of what we're seeking to achieve actually depends on people changing what they do. So another way of looking at this is this picture. So this shows change as being about moving from where you are to a better place in the future, and that better place delivering greater success. What this is saying is absolutely that success depends on smart people coming up with new solutions for the future and designing, developing, and delivering them within constraints of time, cost, and quality. But what it's also saying is that success is dependent on the people side of change. We need the top arrow, but we also need the bottom arrow. It depends on people embracing, adopting, and using change, any change, in the way it's intended. And it's only when those two things come together, the technical and the people side, that we can expect to see a successful outcome. And it's this people side that is the domain of change management. So many organizations have embraced a structured, intentional approach to taking the technical side of change, to approach it to dealing with the technical side of change. Far fewer have embraced and adopted a structured, intentional approach to the people side of change. So just to summarize the first of the whys, why do we care about change management? We care about change management because, first of all, change is critical to creating value and success in the future. That's number one. Most of that change, not all of it, but most of that change depends on people changing what they do if it's going to deliver a successful outcome. And change management is what enables us to not leave the people side of change to chance. So that's the first why we care about change management. Moving on to the second why. Why should you, as learning professionals, care about change management? This starts, I think, with a simple idea. We often talk, label change, think about change as an organizational thing. We talk about a ServiceNow implementation or a sales transformation. The reality is that change happens as a result of individuals within an organization changing what they do. We might introduce a new workflow in something like ServiceNow, but if each of the individuals involved, if they don't change what they do so that they play their part in that new workflow, then the change is likely at best to struggle and at worst to fail altogether. So change management, it's about not leaving the people side of change to chance. And if change management is to be successful, it has to be something we can apply at the individual level, because it's individuals that are our unit of change. Change happens one person at a time. So this is where I want to introduce you to the tool we use for facilitating individual change. And that tool is something called ADKAR. It was developed by ProSci in the 90s. It's a simple, but in our experience, I've been using it for 10 years or so, very powerful model for facilitating change at the individual level. As I say, it was developed by ProSci in the 90s, and it's very much at the heart of their change management methodology to this day. So what is it? So ADKAR, at a high level, it's a series of 5 sequential building blocks which need to be achieved for an individual to adopt a change. So it starts with awareness. So awareness of the need for the change, why the change is necessary. That's the first foundational critical building block that we need to put in place with any individual going through change. The next block is desire. So this is desire. This is a decision, a personal choice to participate and support in the change. And those two first stages, awareness and desire, absolutely vital. Because until we take people through those two stages, until they understand why, until they've made a personal commitment, it's highly unlikely they're going to put any effort into the change that we're seeking to deliver. But awareness and desire, whilst they're critical, they're not enough. We then need to move on to equipping people with knowledge and ability. So they need to know, they need to learn new things, and they need to put those new things into effect. They need to be able to apply them. So knowledge is about acquiring and learning. Ability is really about implementation of what is learned. And then the final stage of ADKAR is reinforcement. So reinforcement is all about taking action to ensure that the change is maintained. So very simple model, a building block model, sequential model, but very powerful when it comes to thinking about what needs to happen to take people through the change. So where does learning and development fit within this? Well, we can see learning and development. We can look at this as a sandwich, a bit of a strange metaphor, but we can see learning as the jam in the change management sandwich. So the learning zone, as we like to call it, is the knowledge and ability. They're the knowledge and ability building blocks within ADCAR. It's in the knowledge and ability and some degree reinforcement stages that really learning has a huge part to play. So seen in this light, learning is absolutely critical to the success of change management. And also learning and development is completely dependent on, or highly dependent on, change management for it to be successful. If we think about learning and development, the learning zone in the absence of the bread in the sandwich. So the learning zone is the jam and the change management is the bread. What would be the consequences? What are the consequences of having the jam without the bread? What are the consequences of delivering learning interventions without awareness and desire? What are the consequences of delivering learning interventions without effective reinforcement? So the whole idea here, the second why learning professionals should care about change management, is really twofold. Change management creates the context for learning interventions through ensuring that delegates, first of all, understand why what they are learning is important. Secondly, are personally committed to developing the ability goals of the learning. And thirdly, go back into an environment which reinforces sustained application. So change management, learning is critical to change management, and change management is critical to learning delivering its desired outcomes. So moving on to the third point, why enterprise change management? Why enterprise change management? So just a little bit on the language here, change management versus enterprise change management. Change management is very much project-based. Change management is about increasing adoption and usage to deliver people-dependent portion of project ROI by preparing, equipping, and supporting employees. It's focused on projects, and it's done on a project-by-project basis. Enterprise change management is where change management gets applied across all changes in a joined-up, coordinated way. So enterprise change management, the DNA, the fabric, the norm through which individual competencies and integrated change management approaches are brought together. So project-based change management is absolutely necessary, but it's not sufficient. It's not sufficient. If organizations are going to thrive through change, change management has to become the norm for all changes across the enterprise. So I'm just going to illustrate one of the reasons why change management is important with a little scenario. So I'm going to introduce you to four characters: Christophe, Margot, Roberta, and Renee. So Christophe is the sponsor of a change. Christophe has come up with a great idea as to how his organization could work differently. And being enlightened, he's recruited Margot as an organizational change management lead. Renee is a hardworking individual who's going to be impacted by the change. So she's on the receiving end of the change. And Roberta, Renee's boss, is a respected and influential leader in the organization. So OCM lead reaches out to Roberta. Could you sponsor this change for your teams? And can I introduce you to our change approach? So she introduces the change to Roberta. At the same time, Christophe, the change sponsor, because Christophe knows that it's important that employees hear directly from him about the change, introduces the change to Renee. All good so far. But these are not the only individuals introducing change. So Christophe has a friend, Clarissa, and another friend called Carlos. They are also sponsoring changes within the organization. Right? And so not only is Roberta being asked to lead on Christophe's change, she's also being asked to lead on Carlos's change, on Clarissa's change. And without enterprise change management, these changes are not coordinated. They're not joined up. They are just individual puzzle pieces with no narrative that fits them together. And if we take that to its logical end, where does it end up? It ends up with people in the organization being overwhelmed with changes, even though change management is being applied to them individually. They're changes which just do not make sense collectively. So coming back to individual and project and organizational perspectives, we can take a project perspective. We can apply change management to a specific change. And that's usually where organizations start. But the reality is that organizations are not just dealing with individual changes, they're dealing with a whole host of changes simultaneously. So it's really important to take this organizational perspective that recognizes that any part of the organization is going to be dealing with many changes simultaneously. And change management on its own, change management as applied at the project level is necessary. But to truly address the challenge that an organization faces, we need to move into the realm of enterprise change management so that we can deal with effectively the multiple changes that are going to be impacting any part of an organization at one point in time. So to summarize why enterprise change management is important. Application of change management at the project level is necessary, but it's not sufficient. To really adequately address the challenge of change that all organizations are experiencing now, it's critical to take an enterprise approach so that change management is applied in a coordinated way across all change going on in the organization. So that's the first point. Second is without enterprise change management, there's going to be less opportunity for learning to be that jam in the change management sandwich. There's going to be less opportunity for learning to take advantage of the context that change management creates, and also less opportunity for learning to contribute directly to successful change within the organization. And finally, without enterprise change management, learning interventions are likely to be less impactful through lack of a connecting narrative that joins them together. Okay, so that's, I think, our third why. I'm going to move on to the last one now, the last why, and then we have a what to go. So this why is why should we care? No, why should we and how can we measure change management maturity? So, okay. Probably worth summarizing our argument so far. So first of all, we've said change management matters because successful change matters. A high proportion of change success depends on the people side of change, 85% according to our clients. So it stands to reason that we should care about change management if 85% of success depends on the people side of change. So that's point one. The second point is around why change management should matter to learning professionals. And here, the why is because change management is the bread to the learning jam. Change management creates the context in which learning can be really highly successful. So change management creates the context, and also change management is the beneficiary of that effective learning. So that's point two. Learning is the jam in the change management sandwich. Point three, why enterprise change management? This is the last point that we were just exploring. Change management applied to an individual project is great, but actually it's inadequate. It's not sufficient to meet the challenges that organizations are facing. It's an enterprise model that's required. Okay. So moving on to this next why should we and how can we measure change maturity? To answer that first question, why should we? If you're convinced of the need for ECM, then having a way to measure maturity is valuable in a number of ways. So assessing change management maturity can be a highly subjective and fuzzy business. I think we're pretty good at it, or I think there's room for improvement, or I think we're pretty poor. It's all pretty subjective. So having a maturity model and an associated tool helps us to take that subjective assessment and be a lot more objective about it. It can help really add clarity to maturity, allow it to be quantified. It can enable us to establish a baseline as to where we currently are. And as we move forward with any project to improve that maturity, it can help us to track progress and also to focus our improvement efforts on where we're going to get the most value. In terms of what it involves, so ProSci have developed a maturity model, their maturity model, over quite a number of years now, and they have a tool, a cloud-based change management maturity assessment tool that allows you to assess maturity across 5 observable capability areas, and allows you to pretty easily create a benchmark for your organization against a now widely adopted change management maturity model. So those 4 capability areas are leadership. So this measures the extent to which the leadership necessary for enterprise change management is in place. Second capability is application. This is assessing the scope over which change management is being applied in the organization. The third area is competencies. So this is assessing the extent to which the competencies necessary for change management, enterprise change management to be successful are in place in the organization. The fourth is standardization, which assesses the degree to which change management is being applied consistently across the organization. And the fifth is socialization, which looks at the extent to which change management is understood, both in terms of what it is and the value that it delivers to the organization. So that's a summary of the maturity model capability areas. And just to recap on why use it, if you see ECM as an important enabler of effective learning, then benchmarking where you currently are, it's an important starting point for any discussion about running a project focused on developing enterprise change management capability further. So there are 5 levels within the maturity model, and it's probably worth pausing just to think about where your organization is, and think about how confident that assessment makes you feel that awareness, desire, and reinforcement are going to be in place for the training interventions that you plan and you deliver. Okay, so moving now on to the last point. So this is the what. Just going to touch very briefly on the fundamentals of an ECM project. If you've decided that developing enterprise change management capability is important, what would such a project involve? So we can talk in much greater detail about this. Come and visit us at the stand. This is something that we're working with for a number of clients. But at the very top level, and again, this is borrowed from ProSci's Enterprise Change Management Roadmap, enterprise change management capability development involves bringing together the building of individual competencies and the implementation of change management processes the integration of those competencies into change management processes in the organization. At the top level, what competencies does such a project look to develop? It's competencies across senior leaders, across people managers, across staff, across specialist change practitioners and project managers. What processes do we integrate with? In short, it's the processes that are involved in initiating and running changes within the organization. We can bring those two things together effectively, then we can raise the maturity of an organization with respect to change management. And going back to a slide I used earlier on, and I think this is important to to share is building enterprise change management capability is all about change. It's a change in itself, and as such, it needs to be treated as such. So we need that focus on the technical side. We need to design, develop, and deliver a solution for managing change in the organization. But we also need the focus on the people side. So in a very real sense, change management requires change management. Developing change management requires a focus on change management. So I think that's all I wanted to say about the fundamentals of an ECM project. As I say, there's plenty more detail to go into, but please come and talk to us about it, and we can share our experience. There's also going to be a fringe session tomorrow where Ian Vale from Liberty Specialty Markets is going to be talking with Emma de la Haye from CMC about their real life experience of seeking to develop enterprise change management capability. So just to finish with the key points from the talk. First of all, we care about change management because it results in greater value being achieved through change. It also, as a side effect, results in change being less disruptive. But the key focus is change management results in better outcomes. Second point is we believe that should matter to those that are focused on learning because change management creates that context for more effective learning. It's the bread for the learning jam. It's also, I think, important. We believe it matters because that learning is critical to the success of change management. So in a sense, change management is a customer of the learning profession. Third point is that whilst change management applied to one project is good, it's not sufficient. So enterprise change management is what's really needed to address the real challenge of change in an organization. And ProSci provide tools that enable you to measure that maturity. And that measurement can be really helpful when it comes to thinking about how you're going to improve that maturity. And finally, to think about building change management, an enterprise change management project, the fundamentals of that are it's a project and a change in itself, and it's a project that really is founded on developing individual capabilities and integrating them into the processes through which change is delivered in your organization. So I really hope that's been of value. As I say, please don't hesitate to reach out and to us if you would like to discuss any of what we've covered in more detail. Thank you very much for your time.